Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you guys are new here. Today I will be demoing and reviewing the MAC Studio Radiance Face and Body Radiant Sheer Foundation, and I have dry and dehydrated skin, so if you guys would like to see how this foundation sits on my skin, then keep on watching. I have this foundation in the shade C2, and I also have a sample of C1 because I wasn't quite sure what shade I was going to be. So in this video, I'm going to swatch them both side by side on my cheek and also do an oxidation test, which means I'm just going to swatch them about 2 minutes later once it's kind of dried down to see if the foundation would darken, and then we'll get into the demo and my final thoughts at the end. So this foundation retails for $33 and it comes in a squeezy tube, but there is 1.7 fluid ounce in this packaging. I don't know the number of shades that they carry, but I'll make sure to post that number here for you guys. And like I stated, I have the shade C2 in the full bottle and also a sample size of C1. Some claims about this foundation is that it is long wearing, supposed to hold for 8 hours. It's supposed to stay true to its color, it's waterproof, it's hydrating, and it doesn't cause acne. It's also supposed to be a buildable coverage with natural radiant glow. So to begin, I'm going to start off with the swatches. I'm going to first swatch the shade that I have in the sample size. This is a C1 right on my cheek, and then right next to that I'm going to swatch C2. I'm going to let those swatches dry down for about 2 minutes and then swatch fresh swatches right next to it. So we're going to go in with C1 first, which is the lighter shade, and then next is again the C2 right next to the shade that just dried down. You can see the fresh swatches are a little bit lighter than these two that have dried down, so I would say this foundation does dry down a little bit darker. Before I go in with the foundation, I do have my regular moisturizer on per usual, and then I did spritz a little bit of this is actually my Smashbox primerizer water, but I have it in the Colourpop Pretty Fresh setting mist bottle because this mist is really nice. I'm just gonna go in with C2. So the way that I like to apply, or the way that I found that works for me, is actually using my fingers. The website does recommend your fingers, your brush, or a sponge, but I feel like with this really thin consistency, it works to use your fingers because initially when this foundation comes out of the packaging, it's really runny, and then once you kind of start to warm it up, it kind of thickens up to more like a normal foundation consistency. So you want to make sure you shake the bottle really well. You guys can see it's really thin, really runny. Like I stated, it's almost like a serum type of foundation, very runny, and then once you kind of start to blend it out, it really starts to thicken up. And I'm just using a brush just because my fingernails are not that cute right now, but I'm not quite sure if you can tell, but once you kind of start to blend it out, it becomes a little bit more tacky, a little thicker, and I wouldn't say harder to blend, but it's just not as thin. I just go in with about that much on my fingertips, and then I'll just kind of rub it together until it kind of starts to thicken up. Now I just like to kind of press it into my skin. Initially, I find that I can really just swipe it onto my skin, but then, like I stated, once it starts to kind of thicken up, I just like to pat it. And I'm just going to do about the same amount for the other side. Now I'm going to do a little bit more, about half of what I usually would do for my forehead. Once the first layer is applied, I like to go in with a damp beauty sponge. So it barely has any water in it. Once I squeezed out all the water, I actually put it in a towel and squeezed it even more because I just want it to be slightly damp, and I just like to go in and pounce on my skin to make sure there's no streaks. And then once this layer has dried down a little bit, I'm going to go in with a second layer so you guys can see what it looks like. But let me go ahead and do a side by side of what my natural skin looks like compared to one layer so you guys can see the coverage. Now I'm going to go in with a second layer, just basically repeating what I did for the first layer. And then again going in with my damp sponge and just pouncing all over my face. Alright, this is what 2 layers look like. Let me show you guys a quick side by side of my natural skin, 1 layer and 2 layers. So I don't want to give too much of my review yet, but I just want to look up close and tell you guys my thoughts. Again, I've already worn this a couple times, but the main thing I love about this foundation is that it just looks so natural on the skin, and there's barely any creasing. Even with 2 layers, it doesn't look cakey at all. My skin still feels really hydrated, and you can still see a lot of my freckles and red spots. This foundation is very, very light coverage, but I just mainly love the way that it looks on my skin. My final thoughts on this foundation is that I personally really like it. This is the only foundation that I found looks nice in natural lighting. It looks so beautiful, and it looks like your skin but better. And if I'm gonna wear a foundation that is really light coverage, I don't want it to look like I have anything on my skin, or else it's not worth it. And this thing, as you guys saw, is really light coverage. I did 2 layers and it just evened out my skin tone, but you can still see a lot of my red spots, my freckles, and my natural skin underneath. I did wish it provided just a little bit more coverage, but I think for every day it's fine with me, and I think the way it sits on my skin just makes it even better. I did have to set my face a little bit because I don't like it to look too glowy. I think I've kind of started to go away from the super glowy and just more of a natural skin like finish. So I did set my forehead and around my cheeks a little bit, but honestly, if you have dry skin, you're really gonna love this. I also love it because it is very long lasting, just like its claims. I've worn it for over 10 hours and it still looks really beautiful by the end of the day, and I don't see any patchiness on my face at all. This foundation is also really hydrating, especially for someone who has dry skin. I love how it doesn't feel like I have anything on my skin. It does say it's a sheer buildable coverage, which I do agree with. It is definitely just slightly buildable, but since it's so sheer, obviously it's really hard to see the buildable coverage. The only thing that I would have to know about this foundation is that it just takes getting used to the application, because I do use my fingers. Usually I would use a damp sponge, but since this foundation is so thin, I don't think that a sponge would be the way to go, because I feel like it would just soak in the foundation. So I do have to use my fingers, and it does get really messy, which I don't prefer, but you just have to do what works best for the foundation and for your skin. And as you guys saw earlier, once it dries down, it does darken up a little bit, and I feel like the C2 shade does match me pretty well, but I'm sure with MAC you'll be able to find a shade that works for you. And since it is such a sheer coverage, I think you'll be able to get away with a shade that isn't perfectly your match, since when you blend it out, it just disappears basically. Overall, I really recommend it, especially if you have dry skin and you're looking for something that is just really natural, perfect for every day. But I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you guys did, make sure to give my video a like. It would really help my channel out a lot. And if you guys are new here and liked my video and would like to see more future reviews from me, especially if you have dry skin, definitely consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye guys.